welcome into the New England Hockey Journal's RinkWise podcast. I'm your host, Evan Marinofsky, joined today by Patrick Donnelly. Wasn't here for the last podcast. Now he's here. He's finally back. Pat, how are you?
I'm good, excited for the season, a little over a month away, but happy to have something to look forward to now.
Yes, very much so. And joining us today is New Hampton boys head hockey coach, Connor Gorman. Connor, how
What's
are
going
you?
on? What's going on, fellas? I'm great. I got two of you today, so really that's special. Appreciate you guys doing that for me.
Of course. Double the questions. Pat, we're gonna keep him here
Yeah.
all day. We're gonna interrogate him, get the light on him, everything. How was your fall, Connor? Like what does that look like hockey wise for you?
Yeah, the fall's great. We actually changed things up a little bit here and joined the New England Fall Prep League out of Salem, New Hampshire this year. This is our first year doing it. To be honest with you guys, it's been a home run. The guys love it. It's competitive. KUA did it last year. You know, Tim Whitehead and I are pretty close, and I reached out to him and picked his brain on it, took notes for 45 minutes, and met with my group last spring and said, "Hey, this is something we could do," and they were all for it. And I'll be the first to tell you, right? If KUA is doing it and it's working, then I'm not shy to say that we'll try it too, right? It's a pretty impressive program over there. So it's been great. Games have been competitive. We've got about 6 full prep teams in it, plus some outside teams that have been really strong. And then on our campus, our ice is in year round, which is fantastic. We skate 2 nights a week, Tuesday nights, Wednesday afternoons, and then we're in the gym 4 to 5 times a week as well with a strength and conditioning coach and doing some yoga and stuff like that. So with the 2 skates during the week and the 2 games on the weekend, it's a really good model. I think some guys in a perfect world would like 3 skates during the week. And, I'm not opposed to tinkering with that a little bit, but I also am a big believer in, the weight room and getting in there and developing that way. So we've got a pretty good setup here.
And do all of your kids from New Hampton, do they play on that team? Nobody else play. They don't play on any other fall team.
No, and it's a great question, loaded question for sure as I go into this recruiting cycle and navigate. 'Cause we're going to do the fall prep league again because it's been awesome, right? I'm a younger coach, but I have a lot of old school tendencies, and I'm at a point where, I'm probably not going to recruit a kid if he says, "Hey, I'm not playing in that league. I'm doing my own thing." Because if 1 or 2 people don't do it, it just doesn't work, right? So,
Hmm.
Cam Karen was with us for 2 years. He's obviously in junior hockey now, but he was a kid that was all in on this, when he was returning. So when you have someone of that caliber and that recognition who's all in, it made it a pretty easy sell for the other guys. So, yeah, long-winded answer there, but to answer your question, yes, everybody on my team is there.
What's interesting about it, like I was talking to Tim Whitehead about it last year, and I think it was for when they won the Elite Eight, we were talking about it, and he was saying how, for him, like his guys have been playing together since, September. So when it came to March, they'd been playing together for 6 or 7 months, which is obviously not the norm for most prep teams. And one of the things he brought up about it that I'd never thought of, and maybe it's because I live in Boston, so you don't think of these things, but it's the transportation element. It's the
Yeah.
fact that kids have to, if you go to Kimball Union and play for the Junior Eagles, you got to find a way to get from all the way up there in New Hampshire to Foxborough, Massachusetts, or Attleboro, or the New England Sports Center, or wherever. And, not only is it a long drive, but these are kids, and you're asking them to every weekend to make that trek. I would assume that's another big selling point for you guys is it's, all one way and it's
Yeah.
sort of safer, right?
Yeah. We operate a little bit differently than Kimball Union does. And I'm super fortunate that New Hampton allows our upperclassmen to have cars on campus to help with transportation to and from games. Obviously, New Hampton is a half mile off of 93, and Salem Ice Center is a mile off of 93. So it's a pretty straight shot and a very safe drive. I will give a shout out to our parents as well. They've been super helpful, in previous years and this year, just helping with carpooling and things like that. But super blessed and fortunate here that, the guys can carpool each other to and from the game. So we have about 5 or 6 guys that, load up the car and get down there. I know Kimball Union does it a little bit differently where they have buses that take them down. and I mentioned how fortunate I am. My life at New Hampton might look a little bit different than, maybe another coach's. I work at the school full time. I'm on dorm duty once a month each weekend. I'm our SAT coordinator, so I was here running the SATs in early October. So, and I got a young family, so for me to be able to go every weekend, back and forth on Saturday and Sunday to Salem is just not in the cards for me. So,
Yeah, no, Pat, I don't know if you like when people mention SAT, it's like the Vietnam flashbacks come back where it's like,
Yeah, that,
oh,
that meme with the dog and the helicopter behind him.
the SATs. Oh no. Oh my God. Those were the
Yeah.
days.
and it's
One of the things on the podcast earlier this week with Ali Skelly, he mentioned transportation too, but another thing he mentioned about fall hockey and why he's not a big fall hockey guy is like, you got to kind of, there's not a lot of back checking, there's not a lot of defense, not a lot of systems. You got to kind of wash that out of the kids come the season. Do you think that like obviously like a little bit remains to be seen, but do you think it might be easier like all your guys have been playing together? Do you think there's a little bit more, I guess, sort of playing cohesively as a team rather than all individuals once you get to when the season starts?
Yeah, yeah. I listened to a little bit of what Ali Skelly had to say, and he is accurate and spot on with the fact that you got to iron out some of these habits and positional stuff and some systems and just 50-50 puck pursuits, all those little things that are just at a much higher level when the prep season begins. But as you said, we'll see what it looks like when we get going here in 2 weeks. But what I have seen, I think it's going to be a lot easier for me because these guys have been on the same page all fall, right? I went to one game in person. I've watched 5 online. The live stream's been fantastic. And our coach for the fall prep has been Ben Mirages, who played at Providence College and was an NHL draft pick. And he's been with my team, the entire fall. So we text every day almost. It seems like I'm probably driving him nuts, just about what he's seeing, what I'm seeing, line combinations, things like that. So I'm super fortunate that he's been with my group the whole time, and he's getting more comfortable with the group too. So he's sort of talking about guys and their habits and things like that. And I also have an older team this year. The leadership group's been fantastic. We meet a lot. This is probably going to be something we talk about later in this podcast, but I'm definitely not a coach that, hey boys, I'll see you in November, right? Like we're doing a lot of things here, within the rules to try to develop and build for the season throughout the fall.
I want to get into your team in a bit, but to keep it on fall, obviously you meant like I went to the New England Fall Prep Hockey League this past weekend, and unfortunately I only get to see. I saw like the East team, the Central team, sort of the combined teams. Then I saw Kimball Union and Proctor. I don't think I saw any other full teams, but um, more and more teams obviously are playing together in the fall, whether it's in that league, whether it's the Central Mass Penguins, whether it's, an Islanders team that's basically Holderness or Winchendon. Do you think that's the future where kind of prep teams just sort of conglomerate on one and compete in the fall? Do you think that's sort of where it's headed?
Selfishly, I hope so. That's why I said it's been a home run this fall. I mean, right now, it's us, KUA, Governor, St. Paul's, Proctor, Phillips Exeter all in the league with their full teams, right? So the games have been really competitive. They've been physical. There's a little bit of that back and forth after the whistle banter that, I love, right? Because I think it keeps the competitive juices flowing a little bit. There's rumblings that some other teams are going to be joining next year as well. And I think if we can do that and you can get the league to be 10 or 12 teams, it's even more competitive. And, I think then the exposure starts to come too, right? What coach wouldn't want to go watch, a slew of games on Saturday and Sunday at one rink, and knowing it's really good hockey. So, like I said, selfishly, I hope this is sort of the direction more teams want to go in, but I can only speak for, what we're doing here.
Yeah, it is good, and I think it is interesting that more and more teams are doing that. And you mentioned like the competitive element. You see a lot of kids play together. In Metro Boston on the Eagles and the River Rats, and then they go in the winter and play against each other after being teammates. And sometimes the fire is there and things like that. But a lot of times you see guys kind of tapping each other on the shins. And it's like, oh man, like need you guys to hate each other a little bit more. And I think that league helps it. And then the other thing in that New England Fall Prep League is other teams like Seacoast, the Spa was there over the
Yep.
weekend, and other teams are coming into play. So I think you are getting that exposure too, where you're facing non-prep teams as
Yeah,
well,
we're
and I would
playing a
assume that
team,
helps.
the NPU Rebels out of Quebec. We're playing them on Sunday. So we're playing Governor Saturday, and then that prep school team up in Quebec on Sunday, who's pretty strong. So I don't know much about them, but yeah, just kind of a unique opponents as well outside of the prep school teams.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Prep wise for you for New Hampton, what's sort of your outlook for your group on this season?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this group. I'm excited, cliche or not, I'm excited about every group, right? Like I love coaching and, I don't think anything beats playing, but coaching is definitely the next thing, to stay involved in the game, at least in my opinion. We have an older group. I only have one sophomore on the team this year, so we'll be a,
Wow.
a very seasoned older group, which I hope, helps us do well this year, right? In terms of not only winning games, but also just handling the adversity that comes with a season, right? Whether it's a slump, an injury, the dog days, gloomy days of the winter. We play a really strong schedule. So, you could drop 3 games in a row. My hope is that these seasoned older players understand, like, hey, we've been here before, right? This is how quickly we need to bounce back. And it's kind of funny. Last year, we do end of the year meetings individually with each player, and the theme was from a lot of the new players last year was, I didn't realize the magnitude of every game, and those are kids coming from, the Halifax McDonald's in Nova Scotia to an academy to wherever it may be, right? California, LA Junior Kings, California Golden Bears, where they're playing 55, 60 games, and I kind of joked, I got fired up at the Brooks Pingree tournament, because that's an event that we need to be putting together some W's, right? And we didn't. We had 2 ties, and I said this is going to bite us in the butt later on in the year. And we were 6-2-1 in our last 9 games. We made a
Mhm.
good push, but it wasn't enough because we dropped those games earlier in the year. So with an older group, I'm really excited about that. We got 2 talented PGs, Cole Pouliot Porter in net, and then Luke Girardi from St. John Shrewsbury who's coming in. So, when you bring in the top goalie in Mass and a really strong scorer in the Catholic Conference, coupled with a lot of those returning guys who have been with me, this is year 3 for them. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, you went into the MIAA and got like the top talent in there.
Yeah.
Those guys are good, and I remember because and you watch the MIAA closely, because I remember seeing you at one of the events this past summer, with some of those guys.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of sort of getting kids to buy in, I mean, it's an interesting point you raise about, you know, um, kids go from an 80 game schedule or 70 or even 60. And the reality is not every game's gonna mean it's not do or die every game in a schedule like that. It can't be. But you go to prep and you have, 25 to 30, 32 games. And like how do you get kids to kind of to buy into that?
Yeah, great question. Well, I think going back to the fall and sort of that line I used of maybe the kids want 3 practices a week and I'm really only allowing 2 is to keep them fresh and hungry in January and February because burnout is a real thing. I think you need to push and challenge the kids and do all of that. But, if we're skating 4 or 5 times a week in September, like I was a player, right? I've done this for 7 years now. Like you don't want to resent going to the rink in January and February when we got KUA Dexter, KUA St. Paul's, Holderness, Cushing, like we got to be sharp, right? So there's a little bit of that, just who I am as a coach, like to keep the guys engaged, right? Just with the way we build and set up our schedule. The next thing is just sort of the mental and psychological piece of what every coach is trying to do, right? Is trying to get as much buy-in as you can with a bunch of players who have their own individual goals as well. Um, I was listening to a little blurb from Reed Cashman at Dartmouth, and he was talking about if you get 50% of your team to buy in, you're not a playoff team. If you get 70% of your team to buy in, you're probably right on the cusp. If you can get 80% or more bought in, you're a playoff team, right? Because you're never going to get 100%. That's just impossible, because you're always going to have someone who, maybe is fighting the puck a little bit, or, believes they should be on power play one when they're not. So you're never going to have an entire, I mean, that's anywhere. Take hockey, you could do that. Football, a work environment. Like, it's very hard to, maybe damn near impossible to get 100% buy-in. So I think as coaches, that's what we're always trying to do is how do you get the group to buy into a common goal? How do you get through the hard times? I think a lot of it is who you are as a coach too, right? Like, I try to coach, my top guys harder than I do anybody, so they understand that, like, there's no favoritism, right? I try to make connections with every player on my team, whether they're the first, guy I go to score us a goal, or a guy that, maybe only had 2 shifts in the third period. I try to really be in it with them. I always say to the guys, like, guys, I'm in the trenches with you, right? And I'm never going to stop grinding with you. And you hope that they take on an identity, of our coaching staff a little bit. And then there's a little bit of luck too, no doubt.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Um, is when I was talking to Ali Skelly earlier, on the last podcast, he mentioned, and you mentioned this just now, the way to get kids bought in, one of the top ways is is making sure kids know that you care. And that can be hard. I mean, it's a long season. People get mad. It's, there's a lot of kids on the team. There's only one of you. Um, I assume that's the same with you. You're obviously a young guy. Has that changed over the years, like from when you were a player? I know you're a 92.
Mhm.
I'm a 99. Pat, you're a 2000, right?
Yep.
We're
I'm
all
with
in the
the, I'm
same.
with the
We're all in the
young
same.
bucks.
We're all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. Um,
Kind of.
kind of, no, we are. Um,
Pat is thinking right now that coach is old.
yeah, Pat, say it out loud. Say it out loud, Pat. Um,
No, I'm just getting used to usually being the youngest guy here all the time, which it comes with the territory of being a 2000. So
yes, it does. It does. Hey, you know what? I always joke I'm a 90s kid, even though I'm
Yeah, yeah.
completely not a 90s kid at all. Is that like when you were coming up, Connor? And I know you played at New Hampton, you played at SUNY Plattsburgh, did some time in juniors. What did you take from those coaches that sort of molded you into the coach that you are today?
Yeah, really good question. So I grew up in Mass. I played for all of those old school coaches. I played for a couple coaches when I was super young that said, when you hear the door jiggle on the handle, if you don't change, you're screwed, right? So I played for a lot of those types of guys. Which I kind of grew to love, right? Like, that's just that competitive Massachusetts hockey. I played for Bob Emery at Plattsburgh, who's about as old school as they come. I mean, we couldn't have facial hair when we played and things like that, right? Certain way we taped our socks. And so to answer your question, I would say I have a little bit of every coach that's coached me in me, but the best advice I ever got, and it's funny, Ali played for him. Joe Marsh worked with me here my first year, and he said, just be authentic and honest. And I think in my 6 years, this is year 6 as a head coach, I was here for 1 year as an assistant, different role, obviously, but that's one thing I can say that I do very well and have hung my hat on is I'm authentic to who I am. I'm energetic. I'm passionate. I can't fake it. If that's something you're looking for as a player, I'm your guy. If you're like, man, it's just too much for me, then I'm not your guy, right? The honesty is always the tricky part, right? There are hard conversations that need to be have about, where can they play juniors? Where are they in the lineup? What college is appropriate for them? I work here full time as the assistant director of college counseling. So I'm also working, with in that role with, just looking at transcripts and class rigor and GPAs. And, everyone wants to play at an SCAC school, right? But that's a really hard level to play at in academically to get into, right? So I've got a lot of the coaches that have coached me from a off the ice perspective, systems wise and things like that. But then I'm also me, right? Like, I'm also a silly guy. I listen to the same music the kids listen to. They come back from Christmas break, I look, oh, what'd you get for shoes? Oh, those are nice. My wife got me these, So I really try to be a player's coach with that. And the one thing I tell recruits when they come here is, you know, you have to try to compartmentalize who I am the best way that you can, right? So when I'm on the ice, I'm intense and I'm Coach Gorman. And in film, I'm intense and I'm Coach Gorman. But 15 minutes later, when I'm at the dining hall with my daughter and I'm grabbing chocolate milk and I'm like, "Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?" And I'm in a good mood, like that's just because we're on to the next, right?
Hmm.
And I think at the end of the day, every player that's played for me knows that I'm intense. I'm going to push them, but I also love the hell out of them too, right? Whether you're going to go on to play at Northeastern like Cam Karen, or you're a kid that's just going to school next year and maybe playing some club. My goal is for them to feel like, coach had my back all the time.
And how important, like when we go back to talking about getting a team to buy in, just like how have you like just found over the years of, the more that you got comfortable as a coach and like being your true self, how much did that go towards getting kids to buy in? Because like, Evan, you probably know in high school and youth hockey, like, when a coach is putting on an act and just yelling just for the sake of yelling and just
Yes.
kind of doing the song and dance and not really being themselves.
Yeah, I think I've definitely, I mean, I've grown as a coach in so many ways over the last couple of years. My second year as the head coach, COVID hit, right? So we're thinking totally outside the box and doing things differently. Um, I think like I said, buy-in, it's always a challenge, right? Especially at this age. And I don't want to say it's, I've never coached at the college or pro level, and I don't want to say it's not hard there because it is. But I think, in college, especially at the Division 3 level, like most of the time your career is over after college, right? So it's very easy to sort of take a lesser role for the betterment of the team, because when it's all said and done, you want to say, "Hey, I played for a team that won a lot of games," right?
Hmm.
Here, it's a little tricky because everybody, you know, a kid wants to have 25 goals this year, and it's hard to only have 10, but the team's better, right?
Yeah.
So it's tricky, right? And you try, I think for me, I really try to explain to them and show them the importance of the things that aren't tracked on the stat sheet, right? So 50-50 puck pursuits. Like the big thing, I'll use this as an example. If a defenseman scores a goal from the blue line on a soft wrister through traffic, I'm complimenting the guy that screened the goalie before I go give the kid a head tap who scored. Why? Because that goal's not going in if the big boy isn't, or the little guy isn't screening the goalie the right way. So it's
Hmm.
little things like that where that kid actually may have not had a goal or assist that day, but if he's standing on the side of the goalie just waving his stick, that's probably getting saved. And he needs to know that there's value in that screen. And there's value in the importance of forechecking and blocking shots and getting pucks out and winning draws and all of those things. So I think if you can care more about just goals and assists, which is something I do, right? I cared a lot. I cared about that as a player too. If you look at my numbers, like I did some good things, but I obviously, I wasn't this prolific scorer at every level. So I really cared about those small little things in the game, and I try to have them understand the importance of that as a coach now.
And I would assume there's also an element of for those kids when you're talking to them about those things. It's like, hey, if a college coach is there, they're seeing that screen. They are tracking, they're seeing you win your draws. They're seeing you win your 50-50 pucks. Um, you're right, it doesn't come up on the stat sheet, but those things are important, and hockey people see those things, and when coaches talk to you, if a coach reached out about player X who has, 26 points in 30 games, and you're like, yeah, they weren't a point per game player, but they did this, 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 and this, and that's why we won those games. I think that carries almost more value, maybe not to the public, but where it really matters even more than
Yeah, the
just,
people who
being a
know
big point
hockey,
guy.
if the people who know hockey know what they're looking for. And one thing we talk about here a lot, especially with our seniors, is transferable skills, right? If a kid's going on a one-on-one and absolutely undresses a defenseman, goes in there and tucks it under the bar, let's say that's a 1 in 20 chance. That's not a great percentage, right? And yeah, is Middlebury College going to go, wow, what a goal? Yeah, of course they are. But they're also looking at transferable skills like the screens and the puck pursuits and the forechecks and, little things like high flips and putting pucks into space behind defensemen. Like, okay, if you're undressing a D in prep school, well, the best of the best D are in college. So how often is that really happening? Probably not
Yep.
as much. But a screen happens every offensive sequence, right? So I look at it like that, what's a transferable skill? I work with the forwards a lot here. We always talk about, manufacturing offense in different ways. If you had X amount of goals at U16 and you said, I scored a lot off the rush, well, you might have to score more inside the middle ice, the hard areas at prep school, right? And then as you go from prep school to junior, now you got to find another way to score, and then so on and so forth. So, that's a big thing, big buzzword we use here is, how transferable are your skills?
Yeah, you see it all the time, especially now with like NHL Central Scouting's list just came out and it's all, projecting these kids. Oh, he could play anywhere in the lineup, or oh, it's, he's a big shutdown defenseman. He can do that at the next level too. Um, in terms of like, obviously every kid who goes to play prep school wants to play college hockey, or at least most do. Most aren't going to. And for a lot of kids, it takes time, right? Like you have an older team this year. Some of those guys have yet to truly pop, but could this year. How do you help kids with patience? Because obviously we live in an instant gratification world. How do you help them kind of understand, especially young guys, like, hey, good things take time. Like stick around a little bit and it'll eventually happen.
Yeah, this would be a great coaching PD for all of us, right? I think everything you just said is exactly what we're doing and trying to do, right? A lot of it is language around it, right? Not hiding behind those hard conversations. Like right now, the conversations I'm having with my seniors and the players who are coming to New Hampton is, it's going to be a small chance that you go from New Hampton to play NCAA hockey, right? Like everyone's going to junior hockey. That's just what it is, right? The leagues are getting older and there's a lot of change in the NCAA. So I would say the first thing is just, individual meetings with players and families to sort of talk about like this sport is like no other, where it takes time, right? And kids pop a little bit later. Here's some of the data too, right? Like here are some of my former players who have done really good things at New Hampton and here they are in junior hockey, right? Now I'll give you a great example quickly. One of my favorite players that I coach, Christian Day, just committed to Skidmore College 2 days ago. He had 9 points for me as a junior, 50 as a senior, was drafted in the North American League, ended up not making it, bounced around in the NCDC his first year, just trying to kind of struggled a little bit with just figuring out that level and, finding his home and the right fit. And he found that now in Wilkes-Barre in the NCDC, and he's tied for third in points, right? So he's an age out right now that just committed to a, top 20 Division III program, and it took time. So it's data. It's using an example like Christian Day to a player I have now. One thing, and this is just the part we could talk about this part forever, is a lot of these kids and their parents are unfortunately going to have to learn through life's failures. I can tell you till I'm blue in the face, that the North American League is going to be a stretch, and I really think the NCDC or the EHL is right for you. But the only way they're really going to learn and understand that is by going through it themselves, and I actually think that's healthy in a way, right? Don't run through adversity, face it, handle it, and be better from it on the way out. Because we've all been through it, right? Like there's no player that hasn't been through it.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think you see a lot of kids now who, shoot kind of one rung higher in junior. And then after a couple months are kind of back to where they probably should have been initially. But it can be. I was talking to someone yesterday who went to the USHL a little early. It didn't work out, but he was like, no, I learned a lot about myself and I got to do all those things. And so I think that that's overall a good thing. You mentioned Division III hockey, and I think that gets overlooked sometimes by kids coming up. I think everyone's shooting for Division I, and that's cool. But there are a lot of opportunities at Division III. It's such a high level of hockey. You obviously played it. How do you kind of convey to your guys that Division III is a really, really good option and a good league?
Yeah. So again, a lot of it is just conversations, language, data, previous players. What have they done at New Hampton and where have they gone? This year, actually, Plattsburgh, where I played, is coming to play Plymouth State on November 8th. So I'm taking my seniors to that game. And I think the preseason rankings came out. Plattsburgh was 7th in the country and Plymouth was 10th. Um, I'm pretty sure the guys are going to be pretty wide-eyed when they watch that level of hockey. And, my goal for that is, hey, let's not watch so much so as a fan. Let's watch a little bit to see what they're doing, and let's look at the brochure of where they came from and things like that. I try to tell them from my experience, like how good the hockey was. One of my classmates and line mates at Plattsburgh had a long pro career, and climbed all the way to the American Hockey League. Like it's, I had a cup of coffee playing pro with a bunch of Division I guys. Um, the sport of hockey is totally different than other sports, right? I always say there's Division III players, littered in Division I, and Division I players littered in Division III, right? And some of it, and college coaches will admit it, first-handedly, they make mistakes. We all make mistakes. I make mistakes in recruiting here sometimes, right? For good and for bad. That's how competitive this sport is. And Division III hockey is only getting better.
Yeah, and I think a lot of kids who commit Division I early when they're 16, 17 sometimes are not Division I players when they get there. And then that's how that also happens. Pat, do you have anything?
No, I mean, like one of the things you kind of mentioned when it came to D3 was that you get there and a lot of guys like you kind of know like that's kind of it for hockey after D3. Um and I guess I'm not really sure where I'm going with this. I guess is like how man, I just completely lost my train of thought. Sorry guys.
Sorry, I
Um
lose my train of thought like every
yeah.
time I ask a question.
Yeah, no,
It's been
Evan,
happening to me a lot lately
I'll
where
see
I'll
if
be
it
like
comes back,
talking and
Evan,
it
but I don't
just
know if you have anything
it'll
else.
flame out. What I was gonna bring up with prep, just kind of taking things back to prep. You mentioned the MIAA, and Luke Girardi and Cole Pouliot Porter. Um, how do you notice kid and every kid's different, obviously, but how do you notice kids transitioning from the MIAA to prep?
Yeah, I think just like anything, it's a jump, right? I think the jump will be there for Cole and for Luke. I think their jump, my hope is that, especially with what we're doing in the fall, the jump is made a little bit quicker, right? Given their success at the MIAA, both older players, there's a little bit of that self-confidence and that self-belief that they both have. Like Luke knows he's a goal scorer. Cole's probably the most competitive athlete I've ever coached. That kid legitimately wants to save every puck. It's really refreshing to coach. I mean, I've never seen anybody compete like him. So kudos to him and just the way
I
he was.
watched him get in some fights last year on the ice. It was great.
Oh yeah, we've talked a little bit about that this fall. We're nipping some of that in the butt.
It's entertaining.
I think it's important to keep the emotions channeled a little bit for the good, right? Especially at that position. It's different for everybody, Evan. It's hard for me to say exactly like, hey, I had this kid come in and he did really well. Like
Hmm.
the jump is also like you're living away from home for the first time. You're at a new school. I had a PG for me my first year as a head coach, Robbie Farrell, who was a goalie, and he struggled his first couple of games. And I grabbed him and I said, Robbie, listen to me. This is going to sound really backwards. I said, but you have to care less, not in your preparation or your effort, but about the results. Because he was playing like, this is my PG year. I have to be perfect or else. And that's
Hmm.
just not the case, right? Because of this game and the process and the time it takes. And once he did that, he was lights out for us. That team was really good that year. We won 20 plus games and he was a rock star. He ended up just going to Providence and playing club, but easily could have gone on and played juniors and had a good D3 school, but just, wanted to do something different. But that was something I always remembered because he was forcing it a little bit. And that's something that now I talked to Luke and Cole about that, right? Don't force it. Let the game come to you a little bit. We brought you in here for a reason. We have other MIA players as well, right? We got Andrew Marcucci and Jake Cabral from Lowell Catholic. Jake's a
Hmm.
sophomore, Andrew's a junior, both really good players. And, they're younger, so their jump will be a little bit different. But I think the key word is jump, right? And it's, our level is stronger than the MIAA, right? And when these guys go on to junior hockey next year, there's a jump there. And when they go from juniors to college, there's the jump there. And that's why I think it's so important for us coaches at this level to teach all those transferable skills that aren't on the score sheet. Because if you're a 40 goal guy in prep school, you might not be that guy in college.
And I think there's also the element of, you mentioned like PGs putting pressure on themselves. I think the days of going from prep to college are almost over.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens. It happens with Division III here and there, but a lot of times it is junior. So I think it is sort of framing it around, hey, like you're a PG, that great, do your best, but you're really setting yourself up for juniors rather than, hey, you got to go to college next year. Because I think
Right.
that's also, it's changed. I mean, obviously over the last 10 or 15 years, it's changed a bit with that.
Yep.
You've been around prep now as a head coach for 5 years, right? This
Yeah,
is
this is year 6. Yep.
year 6. You were an assistant your first year out of pro. Um, how have you seen prep hockey change over that time? And how do you see it changing, or how it should change potentially, or maybe not even change going forward?
You have another hour here?
We could do another hour. We could
I'm just
go.
kidding. I'm just kidding. I think prep hockey's still in a really, really good state. Really talented players that are going to go on to do amazing things in college as players, but beyond that, because of just what prep school stands for, right? Development, total human development on and off the ice. Has it changed? Yeah, it has. I mean, there's hockey academies around every exit you take. There's AAA programs who are now partnering with strong, Catholic schools. Like the Penn's Elite. I don't know what school it is, but they've got a school there that they billet players and they go there, right? So in terms of recruiting players, it's even more challenging now because you're going against all your prep school opponents, academies, AAA models. Junior hockey's getting younger. So I think years ago, a Cam Cairns probably finishing up at New Hampton, and now things are a little bit different. Um, I think the level of play is still really strong. I don't think even an academy, even a Mount or a BK where they are playing for a school, I don't think it resembles what we have as a prep school, right? Like playing in front of your teachers and your students and all of those things, just because our travel is a little bit different. Um, some changes I would like to see, like I think the length of the season, and we play 35 games and we use all 35. I think that's great. I think in the fall, I would love if we got 2 to 3 hours a week with our guys. Um, and that's not just the varsity team, right? That's the entire program. I'm our program leader, so we have a varsity B team as well. So I think for me, I sometimes sit here and I think it's silly that I have to, sit in the warm room or walk my dog and make sure that the rink is, hasn't burned down while my guys are skating and, having a captain's practice or or we've brought in some junior coaches to run our skates as well to help, their recruiting, but also some exposure for our guys. So just, I think for me, I'm always trying to think outside the box, but that's the one part, the word I use sometimes it's silly, right? Is like, I wish NEPSAC could bend a little bit and say, hey, we'll give you 2 to 3 hours a week with your team, and to Ali Skelly's point about the habits, like maybe that will help iron out some habits earlier on, right? Because at the end of the day, all of us coaches love our schools and love our kids. And I'm not sitting here saying, oh, I want those extra hours simply from a competitive advantage to be able to beat Holderness or KUA or Cushing. Like,
Yeah.
I just want it simply to have my kids better developed, right? Like, hey, man, you got to stop at the net, right? You're drifting outside the dots. You're screening next to the goalie, right? You're puck watching on a back check. Like that's how I look at it. Because for me, like my coaching philosophy is like it is not 100% winning for me at all. I would say it's 99% everything to me. And the reason why it's not 100% is, I want my kids properly developed so when they get to the next level and a coach says like, man, you drive the net the right way. Like you're always in the mix. And they look back and say, playing for Coach Gorman in New Hampton is how I fostered a lot of these sort of baseline skills. So that's why I think something in the fall, would be nice just to help with some development pieces.
Yeah, I don't think you guys would be doing like the 1-2-2 over and over
Yeah,
again. I
no,
think it would be it's skill work. It's skill work and it's things as you mentioned,
skill and
driving the
habits,
net
skill
habits.
and habits.
Yeah, habits being the big thing. I think again, I think the way that New England Fall Prep League is going, and I think kind of what we talked about at the beginning, I think that's ultimately the way prep starts to go. Like I don't think you have a like I don't think the NEPSAC says, all right, we're starting the season in late October now, and we're gonna, New Hampton
Yeah,
and
we're
St.
sort of
Paul's.
doing it inadvertently, right? Like Coach Whitehead said
Yes.
perfectly. Like we're gonna play when it's all said and done. We'll have 17 games played this fall, plus the 35 as a team, right? So that's 52 games we'll be together as a group.
Yeah. And then one other thing I notice is sort of those academies, because I remember when I started this job 3 years ago, that was the big thing. It was the academies versus preps, who's going to win out. And one thing I've noticed over the last couple of years is yeah, some of the high-end kids pick an academy for the U14 and U15 years, but once they hit U16, they start to move to prep schools and they start to move to playing kids a little bit older but not too much older. Do you see that as well, where it's like you're getting those academy kids after a couple of years, sort of once they've grown a little bit and played at the U14 and U15 levels?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a couple of kids, on my team now that came from different academies, and some of it, it's kind of different strokes for different folks, right? Like some kids are looking for more of a brick and mortar traditional school where they can play really good hockey and also, play lacrosse or baseball or tennis in the spring and also be a kid. I think that's something that's missing in our game too, is like, these aren't professional athletes yet. As much as they love hockey, I don't believe in hockey being 12 months out of the year. I always say I think hockey should be 9.5, 10 months, right? You're September through March, do something in the spring, and then you train and do everything in the summer, right? So there's your 9.5, 10 months. So yeah, we are seeing kids that come and end up doing the prep school thing for, their last 2 years. Um, the reasoning behind it, I think every family is a little bit different, as I mentioned. Um, I think some of the kids, the travel can be a lot for them too. Going out to all these different cities and missing a lot of school, and that's something that no other model can touch prep school. Everything is built in. The academics and the athletics are built in. So you're even this fall prep, like we haven't missed any school on a Friday or a Saturday because of the fall prep league. Guys have been to a couple football games here for supporting the other athletes. So that's kind of my take on it. But we do see, like, I don't go out of my way to really poach players from those academies. Like I'll always
Hmm.
watch and entertain it a little bit. I try to be respectful in that process. But we do have a lot of kids that will reach out.
Pat, you got anything?
No, everything I've had has kind of been answered along the way here.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think we've hit on everything. I think we touched it all.
Hopefully I gave you enough.
We didn't go the full extra hour, like you said. We'll do another podcast with you to talk more prep stuff, and it's always changing. That's the other thing. And like, I do have one more thing before we do overtime. The CHL ruling that's
Oh,
supposed to come out in November. This, I guess we could do like
do we have another
3 hours on
day for
this.
this?
Yeah, we're
Thanks,
gonna need
Evan.
a long
Appreciate
time
it.
for this. Um, Everyone's talking about how it's going to impact college, and obviously it's going to impact college greatly. But how do you see it? And again, we don't know yet, so it's all skeptic. It's all just us being skeptical or kind of projecting what's going to happen. How do you see it impacting prep?
Ooh, good question. I haven't thought too much about it just because I'm more focused on what is it going to look like for college, in terms of, my guys in junior hockey now and things like that. I do think like anything, it is going to have a trickle down effect, right? Like if you look at, the NHL lockout, you saw really good players playing in the East Coast Hockey League, right? So if you look at the rule, and I think at this point when it is passed, right, you're going to start to see club hockey being way stronger, right? ACHA, club hockey being way stronger. Will it impact prep? Maybe your high end kids are saying, man, is that the route to take? I don't know. I guess time will tell, right? I don't think we're ever going to hurt to find players. Everyone wants to be in prep school hockey. It's good. And then you got a great education and just the faculty and just the whole experience of it. So I don't think it's going to impact it that way. But I do think time will tell in terms of just like, what is the pipeline? We've talked about the path and the pipeline and the process of getting to college hockey. And now you're getting an influx of major junior players that are now going to be eligible to come down. Not every player will be. You're still going to have, NCAA clearinghouse and, some of these selective academic schools you're going to have to be able to get into, and some major junior players, might not have the academic background to get into those schools. So, but you're going to have an influx of players that now can be picked from, and it's just going to make it even more and more competitive.
My only, like, looking at it, I think the only way it impacts prep is you're still going to have high-end young talent here because they can't go play major junior in Canada at 14, and you need like a waiver for 15 or whatever it is. I do wonder though, the kids coming down to prep from Canada, like, are there less? Because I would assume a lot of those kids are coming to prep because they want the education piece. That's a big part for them. So I don't think you're getting that in major junior, but I wonder if that knocks off a couple kids who are like, oh, well, can I go to New England prep, or should I just, play in the O or play in the Q? I don't know. I think it's all worth asking and seeing, but we don't know yet.
Yeah, we don't know yet. And I think it's going to be, there's so many places to play. I think my argument back to that would be, what is your role with those teams where maybe coming down to prep school and playing, kind of being a bigger fish in a smaller pond and coming down into this New England hockey hotbed area of college programs. I use that now in recruiting. Like, you want to be seen by junior and college programs. The prep school environment provides that, right? Like, we play in the Exeter Invitational the first weekend of December. Us, KUA, Kent, Brunswick, Gunnery, Exeter, Rivers. I mean, that place is loaded.
It is.
Watching Cushing tournament we're in. So, like, a lot of the reason to come this way is the visibility.
100%.
Then you got to do, 100%. I think the elephant in the room too is, like, just because you're getting the visibility doesn't mean anything. You have to be able to, I always say, like, man, the door's wide open. Like, you can't walk through it. You gotta bust through it, sprint through it.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It is true. All right, let's do some overtime. So I'll hand things over to our great producer, David Yaz.
Overtime.
Yes, welcome back to Overtime, where we give 3 questions to all of our panelists. They are unprepared. They are a little bit scared, I think. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. Special treat for Overtime today. We're speaking to the robots. I asked ChatGPT to name the 3 most iconic moments in hockey history. You will hear from ChatGPT, each one of them. And each one of them, I just want you to react and tell us whether you remember this moment. All 3 of you are probably too young for a couple of them. But if you weren't there, whether it deserves to be on the list, and kind of any reaction you have to it. So ChatGPT, what's number 3? What's the 3rd most iconic moment in hockey history?
Number 3, Bobby Orr's flying goal in the 1970 Stanley Cup Finals. Orr's iconic dive after scoring the overtime goal to clinch the Boston Bruins Stanley Cup victory is one of the most famous images in sports history.
Now, again, I was only maybe 4 years old when this happened, so I don't really remember it, but I think we all know it. So, Connor, any thoughts on whether that moment, Bobby Orr's flying through the air goal, belongs on this list?
Oh yeah, it definitely belongs on the list. As a diehard, lifelong Bruins fan, it for sure belongs on the list. The one thing that I've heard rumblings of is it wasn't a diving goal. There was actually a looked like a trip prior, and the dive was sort of maybe trying to embellish a call a little bit, but ended up going in the back of the net. So I don't know if that rumor is true. I wasn't there, but that's what I heard.
I'll give you the
You
answer.
weren't there? You weren't there?
No, I wish I was.
Evan, how about you? Thoughts on Orr? That even though you were, it was way before your time. Your thoughts on it?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's iconic, and it's, ironically enough, it was to win a series that the Bruins won 4-0. So like, It wasn't. I don't think it was ever a really close series, but the iconic. I mean, credit to Bobby Orr. Like, again, you're right, Connor. He got tripped after the goal. Like, it was just a tap in front. He trips over. I think it was one of the defensemen in front, kind of like toe picked him, and he went in the air. But he put his hands up. Like, I think a lot of guys that's a split second thing, might not have done that. So I find that, like, showmanship level 100. in a time when I don't know if that was super prevalent. So, yeah, definitely deserves to be on the list.
Yes, well put, Evan. And you're absolutely right. He was tripped immediately after he scored the goal, and his momentum just took him forward. And it was like he decided, I'm not going to wait to land to start celebrating. I'm going to start celebrating while I'm midair. Pat, any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, surprisingly, I was not there.
Oh, really? Okay.
But yeah, it's one of the most iconic moments. And like as a Bruins fan, you got the statue out there. You had to take a picture of it every Bruins game you went to as a kid. And I always think like the call, like Evan said, the arms in the air, and then like the story about that guy who got that iconic photo is always cool. Like he wasn't even where he was supposed to be shooting. He just saw it was open, popped himself down there right before and got that shot.
Good insight. All three of you sort of added something to this. Yes, the statue is maybe my favorite statue in Boston. It was probably a architectural nightmare to figure out how to make a statue float in midair, but they did. And the part of the irony, I think, is it's wouldn't have been as iconic if he didn't get tripped, right? Because as you correctly pointed out, Evan, it was a sweep. It was it was a winning goal, so the fans would have went nuts anyways. But I'm not so sure it would have been remembered. You can liken it to Derek Jeter diving into the stands in Yankee Stadium, because I contend that was a hype job. It was a decent play. But what people remember is he couldn't stop himself because he's such a klutz, and so he went flying into the stands and hurt himself. Big deal. All right. Sorry, I don't know why.
Routine fly ball in foul territory.
Kind of was.
Even need to go near the stands. But
it's true. Earlier in the game, the Red Sox shortstop Pokey Reese had one that was even harder, and he did not land in the stands because he has coordination. All right, we'll pick on the Yankees another day. But ChatGPT, what's number 2 on this list?
Number 2, Wayne Gretzky's 50 goals in 39 games. In 1981, Gretzky, the Great One, set an unmatched record by scoring 50 goals in just 39 games during the 1981-82 NHL season.
1981-82 season, Wayne Gretzky's hits that mark, and I wonder whether this deserves to be on the list. It was historic, but it's a stat. I don't know. Let's start the other way around. Pat, your thoughts on Gretzky and that record?
Yeah, I don't know. Like you said, it's a stat and it's a milestone. It's obviously crazy impressive, but I feel like, there are plenty of like other Stanley Cup winning moments that could go above it.
Good point. Yep. Evan, how about you?
No, that's not. That's cool. Like I had no doubt, but like we're doing top 3 moments. Like, no, I mean, I think the coolest
top
Gretzky
3.
stat. Yeah. The coolest Gretzky stat is that you could take away all his goals and he still has the most points in NHL history. Like that's the Gretzky stat to me.
That's insane. Yep.
At 50 and 39 is cool, but
it's
not in top 3.
Right. It's kind of akin to Tom Brady. If you take the first half of Tom Brady's career or the second half, they both go to the Hall of Fame. And Connor, your thoughts on the Great One?
I agree with Evan. Not on the list. Very cool stat, especially basically the sticks were like boat oars back then. So pretty cool to score 50 and 39, but not on the list for me.
Number 1 on the list. I bet you know what it is. Let's just play it. Let's ChatGPT tell us what number 1 is.
Number 1, the Miracle on Ice. It was the 1980 Winter Olympics, where the underdog U.S. men's hockey team defeated the heavily favored Soviet Union in the semifinal, inspiring the nation and securing a gold medal.
Connor, we've talked about this moment on this podcast probably many times because, in this reporter's opinion, it deserves to be number 1. But your thoughts? I know I'm going to guess you were alive in 1980, but do you have any memory of it, Connor, or no?
I was not alive then.
Okay, my bad. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I need to start working out more then because maybe I'm looking old.
No, I'm just bad at math is what it is. Sorry.
Yeah, I would say definitely belongs on the list. I wasn't there, but I've heard, one of my coworkers here was actually a rink boy there moving the nets around on that game. Just an amazing moment. I actually go back to Lake Placid every summer. I played college lacrosse at Plattsburgh as well, and I play with my teammates in a summer lacrosse tournament there. So I get to see, just the village and the rink every time I go back in the summer, and I get goosebumps all the time, right? So
I've never been there. I've heard there. I asked somebody, well, is there like a monument to it? And someone told me,
yeah, there's
like
a ton
all of
stuff.
Lake Placid is like a whole monument to the thing.
The whole thing, yeah.
Thing.
And honestly, it's not a super the town, the village hasn't been updated a ton, so it's got a lot of that old school feel, which is cool. So yeah, definitely on the list.
Excellent, Evan.
Yes, number one. That's what I was thinking the whole time, and I'm not surprised. I was surprised at the Gretzky one that ChatGPT would mine that.
Yeah.
The miracle for sure. But my favorite, like one of my favorite logistical things about it is the fact that the game wasn't live. They recorded it and then played it later. I mean,
Absolutely true.
To our minds here, like the thought of that is crazy. The thought of like nowadays it would just be live. And if you tried to do something like that, it would just be spoiled. Like you can't even watch something and 2 hours later on DVR anymore without checking Twitter and seeing the results or anything like that. So yeah, and then you consider the historical circumstances of it too, US versus the Soviets. I mean, incredible.
Yeah, I'll give you my quick story, not really a story, but how I experienced it. I was, I was 12 years old and super into the Olympics and the hockey team. And so I had followed them, and, they had like the first game, they had Dave Silk tied the game in like the final minute and earned them a tie, which let them kind of stay alive. But you're absolutely right. The game was shown on tape delay. I don't remember why. It seems absurd in hindsight. My dad is on the couch watching the game, and I want to know who won. And there's no internet. And what am I to do? I remembered the Boston Globe had a hotline that you could call that had updated scores. So whenever I got the Boston Globe in the morning and the Red Sox had played late and it didn't make the paper, I called 617-265-6600. It's one of the numbers I still remember for some reason. I called, and my mom is standing next to me. I'm in the kitchen. My dad's in the living room. And I hear United States 4, USSR 3. And I thrust my arm into the air, and my mom put her hand on my mouth because she didn't want me screaming, because it could have been one of the first spoilers in history. My dad didn't want to know who won, and then I sat down and watched. Anyway, Patrick, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a very good number one. I would have had it there too. I think one of the coolest things for me is like in the book The Boys of Winter, I forget who wrote it, but just seeing how Herb went about building that team and the systems, and how like he was actually like, or there was like a lot of back and forth with the Soviet coaches about what they do and stuff. So I think like the ins and outs of the lead up to that was really cool, and getting the team to play how we wanted to and building the roster. And yeah, Lake Placid is really cool. I was there this summer for the USA U18 select camp for the girls side, and had some downtime, walked around the 1980 rink, and
cool.
The town's so cool. And I'm a big mountain guy too, so it was nice to be up there. So yeah.
The book, The Boys of Winter, written by Wayne Coffey, and the team members Ken Morrow and Jim Craig add like a chapter here or there, whatever. So great all around. I'll just kind of finish this thought by saying I did get to meet Al Michaels circa 1998 or something, and he was I said hi to him. He was in town doing a Monday Night Football, and I said, well, anything match 1980 U.S. hockey. And he said, how could it? He said, it was at the height of the Cold War. You had amateurs playing against what were basically pro players. Nothing will ever top it. He's biased maybe, but you kind of have to agree with him. Is there anything that you think should have landed on the top three, that anything come to mind? If anyone knows, just kind of shout it out.
I do want to add a little fun fact.
Connor.
So Al Michaels' grandson plays for me, and he was
No
here
way.
at Parents' Day about 3 weeks ago. So
unbelievable. Does Al ever come to watch?
This is his grandson's Nate. This is his first year here, so
Okay.
I'm hoping he comes to a game. He was here 3 weeks ago for Grandparents' Day, though.
So I want to pitch an idea for you, Connor.
Yep.
Last year, Gary Thorne's grandson, Gio DeJulian, played at Kent, and Gary called a game. And I think we used, if memory serves, for the TV show for the NHL draft, like prospects rankings, I think we used a call of Gary Thorne on the show.
I'm in the works with something like that. My advisee does all of our commentating and broadcasting here. So that's a behind the scenes New Hampton thing that we're working on. I also want to respect, Nate's path and all of that, right? And
Yes.
and Al Michaels' time. But I think that would be pretty special.
That would be awesome. That would be a top 3 hockey moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That could replace Gretzky at number 2.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't have any like other ones, and maybe I'm blanking on some stuff, but I don't like top 3.
I mean, the only one that comes to mind for me, but as a Boston homer, it would be Bork winning a title, not with the Bruins. That was a moment. I guess it's not top 3 really, but kind of a great moment. But anyway, y'all gave excellent answers for overtime, and back to you, Evan, to wrap things up.
Yeah, the Globe thing's wild though, Yaz. You had that scoop and you didn't tell like every kid in the neighborhood. You could have been like the neighborhood. You could have been like Woj.
I could have started calling around. Yeah. Again, it's hard to explain. Things were weird. We had this thing called landlines. There were phones that you used to like just keep on your wall. Yeah, it was weird.
Back in the day.
Back in the day.
But anyways, yeah, Connor, I really appreciate you doing this and sharing some of your insight with us today. And thank you for everything. And thank you to Pat. Thank you to our producer, David Yaz. And that's been another RinkWise.
Thanks,
I'm Evan
guys.
Marinofsky.
Appreciate it.
We will see you at the rink.